Here we go. Caesar, Civil War. Literis si Caesarus consulibus reditus. So the letters, or you can make that singular, letter of Julius Caesar, reditus, was given to the consuls. You can take this all as an ablative absolute if you want. With the letters having been given to the consul, the letters of Julius Caesar, I agree with difficulty. Ab his impetratum. With difficulty by these, this will be these in the consuls, impetratum means you asked for and you have obtained it something. So with difficulty it was obtained with a summa triborum plebis contentione, so with a great struggling or great contest or great arguments of the tribune of the plebs. So with great difficulty it was obtained, ut that reciter Tarrentor, that they would be recited in the Senate. Ut viro, but, so that ex leteras ad senatum refer. So, but those things referred to in the letters, non potuit, they were not able impetrari, this is the form of impetratum, so they were not able to obtain from what was referred to in the letters in the Senate. So there was a great contest. They did read out the letter in the Senate, but what was referred to in the letters was not carried out. Referant consules de republica incivitate incitatat. In modern translations, that incitate's been turned into infinite. But so the consuls referant, they had a big discussion concerning the republic, what was going on in the city-state, in the republic. L. Lentulus consul, it's in apposition, so L. Lentulus a consul, senatu, in the Senate, it's the fourth, republicae. Say, which is reflexive, non de futurum, which comes from de sum, which means is lacking, pollicatur, so he promised. So the consul Lentulus, he promised in the Senate that it would not be failing to the Republic if audacta and fortative, so boldly and bravely, sententias, that's a plural accusative, just means their opinions, dicere, to speak, the infinitive velant. So if they wanted to speak their sententias, their opinions, boldly and bravely, he promised he wouldn't fail the state. Sin Caesarem, so this is Caesar in the accusative. But if respiciant, but if they looked to Caesar and eos gratiam sequenta, and if they followed after his gratitude, or they showed our grace towards him, ut superioribus fecerunt temporibus. Now these two go together. So as in the superior times, as in the earlier times, which they had done, so if they decided to follow Caesar's ways that they had previously done, se sibi concilium capturum. This means there's a future capturum, and this is reflexive. So he, say, would take to sibi concilium, he'd follow his own plans, or he'd do whatever he felt right, neque, and not senatus auctorati obtemperatum. Here's another future going with this. So that he would take his own plans, and he would not obey obtemporum, any authority of the Senate. Habere se, quoque ad Caesaris gratiam atque amicitiam recepturum. So he could also be received into the gratitude and friendship of Caesar, or ad Caesaris, to Caesar. So there you go, that was simple. In iendem sentiam loquitur Scipio. Nice short sentence. So in the same opinion, or in the same sentiment, Scipio spoke, loquitur, deponent. Pompeo esse in animo. So Pompey had in his mind, non de esse, he would not fail the Republic. Okay? So if senatus sequatur. So if the Senate followed Pompey, so you've got the two sides, you've got Caesar's side and you've got Pompey's side. Si cunctator. So if you delay or if you hesitate, and agat, conduct things lenius, which is a comparative. So if you're too lenient, or rather lenient, so if you're hesitating and you're too lenient, nequequam. You can tell by the I in this that it means in vain. There's another one that has an A there, which means by no means. So in vain, eos auxilium. Help will be in vain. C posterior velit, if afterwards you want it. Senatum imploraturum. So that's the future again. So if the Senate will implore afterwards for this help, it will be in vain. And then we go on to chapter 2. Haec Scipionis oratio. So these things were the oration of Scipio. This was in his speech. Because senatus in urbe habebatur, because the Senate was being held in the city, and there's the qui there, and Pompeius aberat was away. He wasn't that far away though. And Ipsius ore mite videbatur. And so it seemed impersonal to be sent mite from ore, the ablative, from the mouth of Pompey himself. So these were the words of Scipio, and the Senate was in the city, Pompey was away, but it seemed as if these were coming from Pompey himself, these words. Dixerat aliquis. Aliquis is some people or someone. So someone, Dixerat, had said, leniorem centennium. What would be a milder opinion? Ut primo. So then, here we go. So, as in the first place, Marcus Marcellus ingressus, that's a past passive. So, he'd entered into em oration, he'd entered into his discussion, these go together. So, this looks like it's going to be a long sentence, but non oportere, they should not ought before de eorea, before this matter, ad senatum referi. So, there ought to not be this matter referred to the Senate, antiquam, so before a dialectus, which is a levy, where they conscript soldiers, happy to be held in the whole of Italy. So they'd raise a levy in all of Italy and exercitus an army conscripti essent. These go together. So an army would be conscripted, and so as we go on, quo presidio, by which is army, would be a presidio, which would be protection, senatus of the Senate. Tuto and liberi, they would be safe and free, quae velit, which they wanted. So with this garrison or protection of the Senate, then they could dare to discernere, they could decide. So all up, so some speakers had made a milder opinion, and that when Marcus Marcellus had first entered into his conversation, that they not ought to discuss all this before referring it to the Senate, antiquam, which is before they had enrolled whole armies through all of Italy and conscripted an army, so that this protection could make the Senate safe and free to do what they wanted, and they could be bold or do it. They could be bold in their decision. Ut M. Calidius. As Marcus Calidius, quae sensibat, who made a proposal, he was proposing, ut, that Pompey profiscerator, so he would be setting off into his own provinces, suas provincias, neque, so that not quas which, esset amorum causa. Causa is behind this genitive, so that for which there would be no cause of arms. So this guy proposed, Pompey set out for his province, and there would be no cause for taking up arms. Timere, Caesarem. So Caesar would be fearing ereptus abim, that taken away from him, duobus legionibus. So ereptus, duobus, and legions, these are ablatives. So Caesar's afraid because 2 legions have been ereptus, snatched away from him. Nay with timare, it's a verb of fearing. So you just say that. He was fearing that ad eos periculum, so that to his danger, reservare and retainere eos ad urbum Pompeius videritor. So it would seem, videritor, that Pompey had, to the city, to the urbum, had in reserve, and he was retaining these 2 legions, these here. And this was the danger that Caesar was fearing. Ut M. Rufus, so as M. Rufus, qui sententiam Calidi, that's the genitive, so who the opinion of Calidius, is that his name? Porcus fere mutibus rebus sequentin. So Marcus Rufus sequabunda, he wanted to follow the opinion of Calidus. Fere, which means almost, and mutatis means change, so Porcus. So it was almost the same as what he wanted, but with a few changes. Rebus is just the matter of this opinion. So Rufus wanted to follow Sequitur, this guy's opinion, but with a few small changes. Okay, hi omnes, all these, that's a demonstrative pronoun. Convicio, this is a rebuke. So all these, the rebuke of consulus Lentulus, of Lentulus the consul. Now, omnes is a plural, so correpti is a plural. They were seized. Exaggerant, or means they were shaken up or disturbed at this rebuking of the consul Lentulus, which will lead us to our daily dictionary word, ex agito, set in motion, driven away, stirred up, shaken up, or harassed. Okay, so there we go. Lentulus, sententiam of Calidi. So Lentulus, in the nominative, sententiam the accusative. So this opinion of Calidius, pronuntiaturum, that's a future, say reflective, omnino means altogether, with a negative it can mean at all. So Lentulus negavated, he denied or refused altogether, say, that they would pronounce it, that they'd take a vote. So he denied altogether that they would be able to take a vote on this opinion of Calidius. Continuing on, Marcellus, a new nominative, per territus, past passive nominative. So per means very. So Marcellus was very terrified, very scared, convicus, at this rebuking of sort of the derision which he saw with his other fellow. So he left off a suicide from his own opinion. 6. So thus, vocibus consulis, with his voicing of the consul, which are his words, the way he's just rebuffed this other guy, terrore presentius exercited, and in the terror at the present army, which is more like the nearby army, so they were fearing this, minus, which is the threats, amicorum Pompei, the threats of the friends of Pompey, pleriqui, which means most of them, compulsi invitae. So this invitae is taking up the plural here. So with most of them invitae reluctantly, being compelled, compulsi, and coacti, again, these go together. So he's forced, or they were forced. So they've heard these words of the consul, they were scared by the nearby army, and the threats of the friends of Pompey, most of them reluctantly in being compelled and forced to being compelled, sequanta, they followed the sententiam of Scipio, the proposal of Scipio. Utai, sometimes it's the passive of utor, but it also just means ut. So we can tell it's picking up here from this semicolon. So the proposal of Scipio was so that ante certum diem, before a certain day, diem is a fifth, so before a certain day, Caesar, the nominative, must dismiss, dimitiat his exercitum, his army. So that before a certain day, Caesar must dismiss his army. C non faciat, so if non faciat, if he does not do this, this is C with a subjunctive. There's future, less bright, and all that sort of stuff. So if he doesn't do this, him adversus rem public facturum videre. If he doesn't do this, he will seem to be facturum. This is the fact. This is what he's doing. He will seem to be against the republic. Adversus rem publica. Interceded M. Antonius and Q. Cassius, the tribunes of the plebs. Okay, so interceded just means they vetoed it. refertur confestum de intercessione tribunorum. So confestum means immediately. So it was referred to immediately, this vetoing of the tribunes of the plebs. Dicuntor. So then it was said, grave centennia. We know from the NT there, we're talking plural. So the most serious or heaviest proposals were spoken. So that quisque each one, acerbissime cruelis issime qui. So the qui joins them. So that the most bitter and the most cruelest dixit. Quisque is singular, even though it's talking to, it can mean multiple people. So each one spoke in the most bitterly, most cruelest, and thus quam maxime, quam with the superlative means so that as big as possible. So that whoever was the most bitter and the most cruelest, colondor, they were the praise from the enemies of Caesar. And that's it for the day.